Hey y'all, it's Bailey with Reclaim Grace, and I am so happy you clicked on this video. Y'all, I am just so stoked with how our projects turned out this week. We have two pretty big and intense makeovers, transformations. Y'all let me know what you think, and let's go ahead and get started. Hey friends, let's get started on our first makeover. I am sure this looks familiar to you all. I picked up one of these a couple weeks ago and made it over, and whenever I picked it up it did not have drawers. It just looked like this right here, and I built drawers for it. So whenever I stumbled across this piece that had drawers, I said, let's pick it up and see what else we can do with it. So I plan on knocking off the bottom, knocking off the top, and taking a saw and cutting this baby right in half. So let's get started. I pulled out a couple drawers, and I want to take a hammer to that top piece, and it's just held in with some glue, and it broke in a few pieces, but I was able to pop it right off. And I'm going to do the same thing with the bottom piece. Next, we are going to bring out our tape measure, measure center in one direction, and then pull it from the opposite direction with that same measurement. And this just guarantees you find the exact center. I'm going to use my square to draw a straight line around all three sides of our cabinet. And then I'm going to take a little squeeze clamp to clamp my square in place before coming in with my skill saw and cutting this baby up. Then I just flipped the piece over and did the same thing to the other side as well. And y'all, I could have got this project done a whole lot quicker if I would have just quit being lazy and pulled out my table saw. But, you know, you always talk yourself into, like, if something's packed up, you tell yourself it's just easier to do it the hard way than take the extra time to pull something out and set it up. But either way, we got it done this way, and that's all that matters. I want to finish up this third cut right here, and then I had to take a handsaw and cut this middle shelf out because, of course, I couldn't get my skill saw blade down that far. So I just tapped that shelf out, and it ended up breaking so I could get my handsaw down in there a bit further. And eventually, I got this thing cut into two equal halves. Our next step is to be gluing these two halves together. I'm going to use my Titebond Quick and Thick very liberally. I am going to squeeze some glue out on one side, spread it around evenly with just a putty scraper, and then once I feel like everything has a good amount of glue on it, I'm going to get these two pieces smushed together and get some clamps into place. I placed probably like 5 or 6 clamps on this piece, just making sure there was even pressure on all sides. I let the glue dry up for overnight, so about 12 hours, came back into the workshop the next day and removed all the clamps, and here is what we're looking like. I'm going to grab a couple of these drawers and just test fit them to see what we're working with, just to make sure everything is panning out like I have it in my brain. So now I'm going to take a quick measurement to see what size plywood piece I need to be searching for in my stash. I was thinking I might want to overhang on the top, but for right now, I'm just getting a general idea. And I happen to have this piece of plywood scrap in my stash that someone gifted me. This was from a cabinet set. I always accept someone else's trash because you never know when it's going to come in handy for a project. So I have the bottom of my cabinet placed on top of this piece of scrap plywood, and I'm just trying to figure out what size bottom I need. And as I'm down here doing this, I notice a big, not necessarily big, but a problem. Do you see that reveal above that bottom drawer? I'm about to show you what this drawer looks like. We have too large of a gap on the bottom row versus the top row. So that large gap above the drawer, I had to end up cutting some more off the bottom. So you can see the difference here. I just sawed it off the same way I cut it in half. I didn't show y'all. And now it's a lot better. So now let's get back to fixing the bottom piece. I'm just going to take my pencil and make a few marks just so I can make sure I'm getting the exact dimension of what I need. I'm going to grab a level and just make that line a little bit darker so I can see what I'm working with. And then I will take it to my miter saw and cut this piece of plywood out. Once I got done with the bottom, I'm going to do the exact same for the top, except I was debating on whether I wanted to overhang, but I ended up making it flush just like I did the bottom. So now that we have a new bottom and a new top, I am coming in with a sander just to smooth everything out to make sure it is flush and flat. There's no ridges and saw marks. I'm going to hit those corners a little bit with a little bit of hand sanding. I'm going to test fit our bottom piece out before coming in with some more Titebond Quick and Thick. I'm going to spread that out evenly, and then we're going to get our bottom board placed, clamped, and then brad nailed down. I did the exact same thing for the top piece, and now I'm coming in to smooth everything out once again. Make sure all of our edges are flush and flat. Get rid of any noticeable pieces that look like they've been glued together, so it looks like it is one solid piece and meant to be built this way. I'm really going to gnaw down this side right here until it becomes perfectly flat with the side. Then I'm going to come in with some glazing putty compound. This works wonders for shallow holes, and it dries super fast. So I'm just going to spread that out and fill any nail holes. I also filled in the edges around the raw plywood seams. And then now we have jumped to our drawers, where I'm just going to remove these card catalog pulls. Put the little baby screws in a cup so I don't get rid of them. And I'm going to set these to the side because I'm going to be reusing these for this project. Now we're going to scuff these babies up. I'm using a 120 grit sandpaper on my orbital sander to just give some micro texture to the surface. And then I'm going to wipe them down and tape up our drawer edges so I can paint messy if I want to. because Lord knows I'm going to. By the time I got done with that, the glazing compound was dry, so I'm just going to sand that smooth. And then I am breaking out some Fusion Oakum, and I'm just going to paint over the raw plywood sections, not the whole thing. I'm wanting to go for aged and chippy, crackly vibe, so I did not want that raw plywood color to peek through my finish. I'm just going to do a very messy coat here. I'm not worried about covering up the whole piece. And now we are going to prime. I'm going to come in with 2 coats of shellac base primer over the entire thing, even the Fusion painted sections. I had to run Roscoe out of the building since this is very, very stinky stuff. And surprise, surprise, we're going with my favorite green combination, which is equal parts olive with equal parts artichoke. I did 3 scoops of the olive with 3 scoops of artichoke, but I did 5 scoops of water because I want my mixture a bit thicker than what it normally calls for. That just means less coats for full coverage and a little bit more of deep crackles. So once I let that sit up for about 10 to 15 minutes, I'm going to start on my first coat. And I started with the drawers, and we're going to start getting these first layer painted. I did 2 coats on all the pieces, and I dried in between the first and second coat. I really like doing that when I'm trying to force that crackle and chippiness, and I just love the results I get. I did paint inside the little cubbies about an inch, inch and a half, just in case you could see some of that area when the drawers were in place. And that's really it for the painting. If you are interested in some milk paint and the color you're wanting is not available right now on the website, just hold tight. I am expecting a shipment any day now. It has been on its way to me for I feel like 3 weeks. I don't know. I think they're just a little behind on their shipping schedule, but no worries. It will get here shortly. Once my 2 coats of paint were dry, I'm going to do a light sand all over just to knock down some of the peaks in the paint. Whenever you use milk paint, you'll get sometimes. And I'm going to do a little bit of light distressing around the corners and edges before coming in to seal up this piece with Fusion's Agent Wax. I just love, love, love this combination of this green paint with the Fusion Agent Wax over top of it. It is chef's kiss in my opinion, and I'm sure y'all get sick of seeing it, but I do not get sick of doing it, and neither do my customers. They buy it every single time I put it in my booth. Now we're going to get our library cards back in place with these tiny aggravating screws. Man, they definitely test your patience. We got those back in place, and now I have a piece of cardstock, and I have already measured to see what size is going to fit in our library pools. I broke out the Apothecary Labels IOD stamp, and I'm using the permanent black IOD ink, and I'm stamping up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spelled out. I did mess up on the first 3, but I just redid it, and now I'm going to cut those out and distress the edges a bit with my ink pad, get those into place. And other than that, our cubby looks amazing. It's done. It's finished. It is perfect. Y'all let me know what y'all think about this piece. Totally different from last time, even though it's pretty similar colors. Y'all let me know. Do you like this one better? I think this one is more my style. I just love, love, love the little apothecary vibe. Y'all let me know what y'all think about this one and reshaping it. I priced it for $97. Our next project was a sad, sad dresser. I picked up this bright blue dresser from Grifton, Mission, and I don't even want to tell y'all how much I paid for this piece. It is ridiculous. I paid $50, and I should be slapped for paying that much. But I had a vision, and I had a hole in my dresser, so either way, we're going to save this piece and give it a totally different transformation. I started off by scraping the top with a carbide scraper. I wanted to see if I could save a wood feature to this transformation. But once I got down in there, I realized it wasn't pretty wood, but the blue paint still had to go. It was holding on good in some areas, but other areas it was flaking right off. So I just wasn't trying to gamble with it, so it all had to come off. I am going to get rid of these wooden knobs, mainly because I had to break 3 of them to get them off the dresser with a hammer. So I'm going to replace those with other similar wooden knobs later down the road. I had a friend hanging out with me in the workshop, so I put him to work sanding the rest of this blue paint off the dresser. It all had to go, and I appreciate the help. The next day, I came back out to the shop and I said I am going to have a wooden feature on this dresser because I felt like it needed it. So I started scraping these gorgeous legs. I'm using my carbide scraper to get the majority of the paint off, and then I had to do some hand sanding as well to get the little bits and bobs off that I couldn't get to with the carbide scraper. I did both of the front legs like that. And now I'm coming in and giving the piece a good wipe down, get rid of any dust and all that good stuff off the dresser. I'm going to let it dry very well before coming in with some shellac base primer. I'm using the Ben's shellac this time. Since I'm going to be rolling it on, I'm going to put my little paint tray in a grocery bag, pour out the rest of my primer, and we're going to start getting this applied to the dresser. I did tape up those front 2 legs so I didn't have to worry about getting any white paint on them. But yeah, we're going to do a full coat over the entire dresser, the top, front, and sides. I also did a coat of this same primer on the drawer fronts as well, but it needed a second coat. So for the second coat, I came in with the clear shellac base primer. It works just as good. I just was out of the white, and I'm planning on painting this piece white, so it was just handy priming it with a white paint. And I am so glad I did, because look at that bleed through. This would have came through my white paint if I would have just proceeded to using the paint without the primer. So when you're working on these wood pieces, Yes, it's just easier to prime it than deal with that headache. I did knock down a little bit of bubbling just with a piece of 320 grit sandpaper. Roscoe needed some loves and wanted to say hey to y'all, so he gave a quick nose boop there. And then we are, I guess, going to give Roscoe some more love. I didn't realize I left all this in here. I'm checking his ears. I always do that. I don't know why. Oh, he's so precious. So this is the paint we're going to be using, Dixie Belle in the color Drop Cloth. And I'm going to be using a well-loved paintbrush because I'm going to be stippling, pouncing up and down my layers of paint on. I did 2 coats all over this piece, I cannot talk, bouncing up and down just to get a little bit of texture. Since this piece was old, I didn't feel like filling the seams up with caulk, so it was just easier to add some texture to this piece than make it a perfect finish. And I like the way it looks, so it was all good. I did have to do 2 coats for full coverage, and I'll be right back. So here is the star of the show for this little dresser makeover. Here is a full IOD transfer, meaning the whole transfer forms one solid picture. But of course, you could break it up if you wanted to. But I love, love, love the inspiration on the back of this IOD transfer book. So that's what I'm pretty much recreating. I decided to cut mine up a bit more so I could place it exactly where I wanted to. And I'm just going to work in sections here, letting some of the transfer touch the dresser while keeping that protective backing in place in other parts. Just so the whole transfer sheet doesn't touch at the same time. Since I'm working on this piece with the drawers in place, they kind of have some height difference with it laid on its back like this. So in some areas where there was a big gap, I would cut the transfer and then reposition it. But with this kind of project and with this much transferring, you just really have to be patient. Take your time. I have this in times 20 speed right now. It took me about 30 to 40 minutes to get this full transfer down. There are so many IOD transfer pads that have this like full design to them. I don't know the names right off the top of my head, but there are probably 5 to 6 of them where they would look so good on the front of a dresser, on a window, on a cabinet, so many different hutches, just so many different applications where these full designs come into works. So head over to my website if you're looking for one of those to apply to your next project. So here's how we're looking after everything was good and down. I'm going to pull out the dresser drawers now and take my thumb and just round over those transfer bits and just burnish everything well with my hand to make sure there's no air bubbles and everything has made great contact. I don't want these little pieces to rip when the dresser drawer opens, so I need to make sure they're rolled over and stuck down. I grabbed these wooden knobs from my stash. I only had 6 of them, but they were a different white color, so I'm just going to very quickly add 1 coat of the drop cloth to them. I had 2 other wooden knobs that I'll show y'all in a little while that I'm going to add to the top drawer. So here is where I royally messed up. I wanted to add some crackle. I wanted to add some chippiness. and I wanted it to be in a brown ink. But I did not want to open a brand new ink bottle to use IOD permanent ink, so I used this ink I had in my stash. And no, 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 no. I was so mad at myself for doing this. This is not permanent ink, and it does not dry to this brown color it shows. It dries purple. It dries red, purple. It just did not look brown when it was all said and done. But either way, I did it. It's over with, and I'm going to try to fix it here in a little bit. I added these cute little baby wooden knobs to the top drawer. I just wanted to add another pop of wood to it, and I thought it was cute. And then I added the white knobs to the bottom 3 drawers. I wanted to seal this piece up with polyacrylic. I have the matte sheen here. Since this is a white dresser, I did not feel like wax would be sufficient to keep this piece clean. So as I'm applying this water-based polyacrylic, my ink starts smearing. I keep going a little bit further, like, am I seeing things? Is this really happening? Keep going a little further, and then I was like, no, this is legit smearing, and it looks like crap. So I quickly grabbed a baby wipe and started scrubbing that polyacrylic off, because I knew it would make a mess of things if I left it up there. And then I also took the baby wipe and scrubbed off that non-permanent ink to the best of my ability. Yes, there was still some up there, and y'all, honestly, I got so frustrated I stopped recording. But what I ended up doing was going over the ink with a couple layers of shellac primer, repainted over those areas, and then came back in with my Crackle in the permanent black IOD ink and did the same thing. And now I'm coming back and sealing over the piece all over again. And I knew that the non-permanent ink would probably bleed through my shellac, my new paint, all that. So I knew I was going to have to add even more age to this piece. See the bleed through right there in the top right corner? Right there by the stem of the flower. It was in several places, so I needed to disguise that. So I grabbed out my Fusion Agent Wax, and I'm going to work in sections, brushing it on and then coming in with a blue lint-free shop towel and wiping it off, kind of dabbing and blotting around the corners to add a little bit more age and dimension to those areas. One of the last steps, let's take off this painter's tape. Take off the painter's tape. And we're going to use Howard's Feed-In Wax on the inside of these dresser drawers. These are dry and thirsty. Look at that difference when we apply this wax. It is sealing up that wood, giving it a fresh orange citrus smell. It smells so good. I'm going to do the inside of the drawer as well. And I want to thank my sweet friend Emily at J. Bowen and Company for sending over this Howard's Feed-In Wax. She sells it over on our website. I'll be sure to link that in the description box. It is one of my favorite things to use on solid wood furniture. I'm also going to take the wax brush with a little bit more Feed-In Wax on it and hit the inside of the dresser too on these wooden rails. This will help your dresser drawers glide in and out like they are brand new. And the last step is to remove this painter's tape on the front two legs and to freshen that wood up with some Fusion Agent Wax. And that is it for this transformation. Y'all let me know, what do you think about this dresser? I think it is darling. I love the age on this piece, even though I probably didn't envision it to have this much age. Y'all, this dresser should have taken me maybe a day or two in the workshop. It ended up taking me 4. But that's more my problem, not my customer's problem. I don't know. I'm going to price it for $247. Y'all let me know what y'all think about this dresser makeover. And that is all I have for y'all today, my friends. Please let me know what you think about today's projects. I love how both of them turned out. I don't know, they're just some of my favorites. So y'all let me know if you got any inspiration from today's video. Hit that like button. Consider hyping if you know how to do that. It really helps us creators out. And definitely leave a comment, and I'll talk to y'all down there in the comments. Bye.